The most wonderful time of the year. Although, let's be honest, around the holidays, things really add up. But here's the good news. Only at Verizon, you can get a single line for $50 per month when you switch and bring your phone. So, while ice skating for two is definitely costing more, here at Verizon, you can save. Gifts for your third cousins? Steep. A single line with Verizon? Not so steep. A real tree? Pricey. A single line with Verizon? Less pricey. Flights to see Meemaw and Pops? Those are up. A $50 per month single line? That's down. Even a trip to the Atlanta Holiday Market will cost you more. But with Verizon, you can switch and bring your phone for just $50 per month for a single line on unlimited welcome, with autopay plus taxes and fees. All this to say, during the holiday season, when everything is costing more, you can get more for less right now at a local Verizon store. $15 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G, 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply.
Cinesmack contains spoilers of the spoiling type. If you don't want your spoilers spoiled, please turn back now. Otherwise, enjoy the show!
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds. Lawrence?
Ladies and gentlemen! Welcome to the main event! This is Cinesmack! And the winner is...
Hello, Cinesmacketeers, and welcome to bout number 144 of Cinesmack, the podcast about films by filmmakers. I am your host, Mike Keeler. Joining me tonight is our panel of award-winning judges. First, writer, actor, and director Kyle. Up on the shore, they walk all day long. Out in the sun, they slave away, while we devoting full time to floating. Fine.
Here you can see the people gathered together for the Cinesmack. They are unaware that this episode will be boring and not funny. Nature is a cruel mistress.
And Tom and Gabe and Andrew, moving on.
Second filmmaker and owner of One Genome Short.
Can't follow that.
No.
Owner of One Genome Short Productions. Gabriel. Now, when you pick a pawpaw or a prickly pear and you prick a raw paw, well, next time, beware. Don't pick the prickly pear by the paw. When you pick a pear, try to use the claw. But you don't need to use the claw when you pick a pair of the big paw. Horrible.
Wow. You know, Mike, he shouldn't have been out there. I mean, in that big, you know, with all those wild gerbils out there. I mean, what did he expect to happen?
Third filmmaker and owner of Arizona Ink Studios, Andrew. How pleasant bobbing along on the bottom of the beautiful briny sea. What a chance to get a better peep at the plants and creatures of the deep. Zoomwalt.
Oh my gosh! The bear Miss Chocolate has left me her poop! It's her crap! It was just in her butt and it's still warm. This is the gift from Miss Chocolate.
Fourth filmmaker and owner of Cheshire Moon Films, Tom, bouncing here and there and everywhere. High adventure that's beyond compare. Agnes.
Yes, this episode's going to be warm, and it's our gift from us to you, and we are pulling it out of our asses.
Gummy bears coming here and there and everywhere.
I wasn't going to pull any quotes from films, for some reason I had to quote Disney movie music. All right, let's poke the monkey.
Ladies and gentlemen, wilderness watchers and deep sea divers, welcome to the main event. Tonight, two documentaries of man and beast traverse the globe for our entertainment. Which will succeed in showing us true natural beauty, and which will just be unnatural beauty. In the first quarter, from 2005, written and directed by Werner Herzog, starring Werner Herzog, Timothy Treadwell, and Bears, Grizzly Man. In the second quarter, from 2020, written and directed by Pippa Ehrlich and James Reed, starring Craig Foster, Tom Foster, and Octopus, my octopus teacher.
Okay, guys, we watched two documentaries.
Did you poke the bear or the monkey?
I poked the monkey. I ain't poking no bear.
You don't ever poke the bear.
No, never do that. Let's start off with our first round, which is writing/editing.
Yeah, so with our CineSmack, when we do documentaries, we consider the editor is really kind of the writer because they are responsible for crafting the story and the ebbs and flows of the plot when there is one, and what lines of dialogue make it into the final movie. So both of these movies are edited very well. On the surface, they're a lot of people would kind of roll your eyes if you told people what these movies were about. That they don't seem like they would be a very compelling watch, but in fact they really are. And I think one of the ways that works, and what one of the things that ties these two movies together is the way that we learn about ourselves by going out into nature and observing animals. And I think it's interesting that we are from one of the hardiest animals, a grizzly bear, to one of the more fragile ones with the octopus. Of course, nature films are full of all of the elements that make human life, that all the earmarks of human life with, birth and sex and death. And it is a reflection of ourselves. And both of these movies do really well. Stabby. Yes. And the other kind of stabby. Thanks, Mike. The stabby that makes babies and the stabby that makes death. So anyway, both of these movies, I think, do a really great job in kind of crafting their story. I think, when talking about which one does it better, I think Grizzly Man is it's one of the best documentaries I think out there. I think it's amazing that Werner was able to bring together, to be able to put the story together from all of the footage that they got from Timothy. I think I assumed going into it that Grizzly Man was going to kind of be told in a chronological order, but it doesn't. It jumps around a lot, from the death scene, and then it hops back to Timothy kind of starting out in nature, and then kind of they go back and they talk to the most interesting coroner I've ever seen in my life, and then they jump back to Timothy as a child. Whereas My Octopus Teacher is much more linear, and it follows the life of this octopus. I feel like that would be a much easier edit because he's kind of there controlling he knows every frame of footage that he captured himself. So I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think of like the stories that came out of this footage?
Well, I feel like with Grizzly Man, it's kind of interesting because, Werner looked at all that footage, 100+ hours worth of footage, and then basically kind of had to craft a story out of it. And then also additionally, I think he added kind of his own interpretation of the footage to the story, because there's oftentimes when he kind of expresses his own opinion on what's going on, and we're not simply seeing what Timothy was saying in the videos. Instead, we got a little bit of commentary with it from the narrator / director, and so I think he kind of imparted some of his own kind of opinion on the story a little bit. With My Octopus Teacher, it was all firsthand, and it felt like that. You're getting the authentic story from the person who lived it. You're not getting an interpretation of footage that somebody else took or whatever. You're getting a firsthand accounting of it. But it's funny because when we talk about documentaries, it is hard because it's like, well, is it written or not? I mean, in the credits, there's like writing credits. So there is some writing involved. There's the writing of the narration and that kind of thing. And so I wonder how much the firsthand accounts in My Octopus Teacher are actually just off the cuff, or how much of them were actually written for him, or he wrote them so that he could speak clearly. But I thought that the story in My Octopus Teacher was very concise. It was linear, but it kind of had to be because it really was in a way a short timeline, and you didn't want to kind of give a spoiler at the end right away. So it kind of had to be linear. But I thought the writing and the editing was very concise. And I have to give a lot of credit to Werner for going through so much footage and then choosing. We don't get the opportunity to see all the footage, so maybe he left out some stuff that was important. But I mean, to go through that much footage and boil it down to a story is really quite a challenge. It would be a really time-consuming challenge. So, my opinion is both of these are really well done, but in different ways.
Yeah, it's interesting to compare and contrast these because one is very well crafted from footage that someone shot and is there present and sort of can lay it out for you, and the other is almost in a way like putting together found footage to tell a story. Mm-hmm. I think that makes the editing in Grizzly Man pretty impressive, that it's cohesive and draws your attention and it keeps you together. And My Octopus Teacher is very pretty and very well. The nature documentary part of it is very intriguing and colorful. I think the choices in some points to... One thing that really bothered me was the overuse of some things. I don't know how many times in the film the guy has to be shown walking into the ocean, but it must be 20 times. And that starts to really stick out as like, oh my God, this is kind of repetitive. And when the movie is only an hour and 20 minutes long, those things become really kind of apparent. I actually thought the movie felt a little long, even though it is objectively shorter. Some of the interview segments, I don't know about the scene with Werner listening to the audio. I did watch some kind of, I wouldn't say behind the scenes, but like Q&A with him talking about it, and he was kind of pressured into that by the producers and people on set. Like, you can't just talk about it. We need to have some interaction with it. They actually wanted to play the audio. And he was like, no, that's not a good idea. So he was like, look, I'll listen to it and react to it. So that's kind of an interesting scene, but and I mean, that's good on them for thinking of that on the fly. And not just saying like, oh, let's just play the audio, because that really could have been too much. I don't know. Some of the interview segments were interesting. I guess that's what happens when you have like real people talking. The coroner is a real character. And the guy who he's only in the movie for a brief amount of time, but he apparently works at the port or air strip there or whatever, who really hates Timothy Treadwell and thinks that he deserves to be eaten by that bear. Was very strange to add. He also had a very fun Wilford Brimley mustache. But yeah, interesting to put documentaries together. And in one of the Q&A things I saw, someone mentioned to Werner, like, in documentaries, you have to kind of sit back and take your hands off and be a fly on the wall. And he said, Timothy said that in his films, and I disagree. He's like, I'm the kind of person who'd rather go out like a wasp or a hornet and sting than just sit on the wall and be passive. So yeah, he really kind of crafted this narrative of what he had, all the documented footage that he had. I think he did a really good job.
Wow. I don't know. I have kind of a different perception of all this. So Grizzly Man felt like a really long version of the Dateline murder mystery, where the guy, all I was waiting for was the announcer to be like, and now the grizzly bear comes. After these messages, we'll see what happens. And I think I found the topic interesting because Timothy he's a fascinating man. He has a personality that is different than most, but has a mindset that is, I would say, beyond what most people would do. And he did some really amazing things for wildlife and for the times that he actually did good with the bears. In being able to show things that at the time, there were some interactions that, holy crap, there's one where he slaps the bear on the snout because it nips at him. I was like, dude, at that point, you've kind of crossed over into you're nuts. So I don't know. It was a fascinating, interesting put together of all of this. The shots. So like one that really stood out to me was when I believe he was the coroner and they were talking about the big metal tube and it had the plastic bags, and then they bring him to morgue and they're shooting him talking about having to identify the pieces because it was just, it all that felt very scripted. Like he wasn't actually being interviewed. Like it was, these are the things that we want you to talk about, and he practiced them. I don't know. It just felt very weird. I agree that it's much more difficult to put all of this stuff together when you don't have the person to ask and say, hey, what were you doing at this point? How did this make you feel? So for that, I got to give him credit because there's probably a ton of footage we didn't even see and a bunch of extra stuff that is just absolutely insanity that, would have been neat to have. But for whatever reason, they chose not to. It slowed the story down, whatever. So I felt like they built a good narrative when it came to that, and actually telling his story and what he did basically for his life, what made him him. Octopus Teacher. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the footage later. Yeah, I kind of agree. It's a linear told from the guy that shot the footage. He's telling the story. He basically built a story around probably something that he didn't mean to discover and built a attachment to, almost as a pet. And it was very fascinating to see the change and the relationship develop and him being able to build that with the footage that he had, which, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about this later in directing, but I'm really curious at how he got some of the footage because it felt like it was very set up in some of the scenes. Not to say that that's bad. It's just, I think maybe that's part of what Kyle was talking about with him walking on the beach. It felt like there were some things that were used, even though that wasn't the situation that he was actually in, which, you probably have to do a little bit because you can't perfectly plan nature. But I mean, his story was, I feel, much simpler. It was him and his pet octopus. Whereas Grizzly Man is more about the man and how he interacts with nature and how he perceived the world. And I think there was a couple even that they talked about how he felt that him being in nature was this harmony, that he felt that he was in harmony with the world and the universe because he was there in nature together with it. And I found that to be really fascinating perception of all the stuff that he did and the number of summers that he was out interacting with these killer predators. So
I think one of the things I is really interesting in watching these two, back to back, is that Octopus Teacher really is about a life, and it's really about, the octopus, and we know where it's going. We know what happens, right? And it doesn't really make the death at the end any easier. Whereas Grizzly Man is a movie about a death. I mean, if Timothy Treadwell and his girlfriend hadn't gotten eaten in October 2003, then we wouldn't be talking about it today. But the Octopus Teacher, the octopi die like that all the time. And I think it's interesting. I mean, it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition between the two. I had something else I was going to say, but I'll bring it up in directing later on. But I thought it, story-wise, they were just two very interesting to have these two side by side.
I think Kyle maybe said it the best, because I think he mentioned it felt very, you had a nature documentary and then you had a documentary about a person. And I think that it shows a little bit of a distinction. At least it felt that way.
All right.
I'll be quiet,
like
Mike. Sorry.
Grizzly Man was it felt almost like a true crime documentary in places, because they piece this all together after the fact.
Yeah, that's the Dateline thing. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, like they know what happens, but they have to explain it in the logical order.
Yeah.
Right.
See, I don't know though, because they know what happened. They know who did it. Like, it was like
they
got the guy in the end.
Yeah.
But
I mean, what's really interesting to me is that people are like, oh my gosh, he and his girlfriend got eaten by what a senseless tragedy this is. And it's like, it's not a senseless tragedy. And I think that's what I think Werner was trying to get at, is this wasn't senseless. Of all the deaths that have ever happened in the history of mankind, this one actually makes the most sense. Yeah. That he spent every summer for 13 years with grizzly bears, and he died by getting eaten by a grizzly bear. And it's not tragic because we, the survivors, learned from it. Don't spend 13 consecutive summers with grizzly bears.
And we told him, you're going to get yourself into a position that is bad. And he did. But even in those, true crimes, that they already caught the dude. That they're like, that's why they're reporting on it.
Yeah. I'm just saying, Werner did a really good job of taking something where you just kind of shake your head, like, how does something like this happen? And Werner's like, well, let me show you,
All right.
I would have had to have watched it to know that.
Go, Mike. You got to interrupt us, man.
Let's put it to a vote. Tom.
Why me first? I'm Grizzly Man.
All right. Andrew.
My Octopus Teacher.
Kyle.
Yeah, it's Grizzly Man for me.
All right. And Gabe.
My Octopus Teacher.
Oh, my goodness. Got a split decision. I have no trivia for writing/editing, except for, I can't remember who said it first, but I think it was Gabe, that talked about the 100 hours of footage. So credit to you, or Tom, whichever one it was. I don't care. We'll do a documentary about who did it first.
It's my category, so I get credit for everything people said during it.
Oh, okay. Tom said everything that all of you said.
Yeah, that shit I said about Dateline, that was pretty smart.
I think it was.
For sure.
All right. Second round. Acting/subject.
Yeah, so I briefly touched a little bit on it with Grizzly Man talking about the acting. Some of the, I guess, reenacted scenes where they were talking about some of the items with the interviewees felt very forced and staged, and maybe, you know, and they probably had some of that. And then there were just, I don't know, there were some weird moments, like when they talked to Amy's friend and they sat her down at a table and then were like, can you talk about them? And she suddenly broke down. It's like she knew this was coming. I don't know. It just felt weird. I feel like the most sentimental, like, real moment of that entire of their friends and their family was at the very end when they go to spread the ashes, with all the bear hair and wheat and stuff, and that felt the most real, the most powerful moment when it came to that. You know, the subject, because we kind of talk about both here. So the subject is interesting because the movie is about grizzly bears, but it's also about this man that, you know, integrated himself into the environment of, you know, a creature that most of us would never want to come even remotely close. I think one of the stipulations was in the park he had to stay 100 yards away from the bears at all time. I don't even want to be 100 yards from a bear. Like, no freaking way. So I think the subject matter is pretty fascinating to see this man that did these just things that you would never do. And maybe that's part of the excitement of that subject. I don't really think the actual documentary is about the death of Timothy. I feel that it is about the man himself and kind of the outrageousness that he did to actually bring, you know, some of this wildlife that is just astonishing, massive, and is frankly a killer to us as onlookers without putting ourselves in danger. And so I think it's a fascinating story in the sense to see beyond some of that crazy, because you look at some of the stuff he did and you're like, that boy's crazy. He, you know, the majesty of the stuff that he did bring to. So I guess I focus more on that as the story as opposed to, yeah, he's gonna die. Like, it's kind of like watching that horror movie and you're like, yep, that dude's gonna die. So I appreciate that part of the story in itself, and focusing on the wildlife magic that he brought to us. As to my octopus teacher, oh boy, some of the most beautiful underwater shots I've ever seen, up close, and just this amateur, you know, doing underwater. I mean, gosh, there's some beautiful shots of ocean, and some of those shots of the jellyfish swarms that he goes around, and just the interactions with an actual octopus, and doing the amount of work and study that he did to really learn more and more about how these animals act and how they are actually perceiving him. And I mean, octopuses are one of the most incredible invertebrates I've ever learned about in my entire life, and they're just so cool with their shape shifting and their color morphing and just, you know, walking, and they build things and they replicate, like, it's just so cool. So, you know, a documentary about them this personal, I think is really cool. It does remind me more of a documentary about wildlife and this guy that, you know, you would see on PBS, that is this just fascinating experience. But I didn't think that was about as much about his story, and it was more about the relationship and learning about this octopus that he'd never really been in. And then they kind of threw in some stuff with his kid at the end, which I don't know. It didn't really fit the flow, but you know, it evidently was passionate to him. But I got to give him props for the photography, and some of the interactions that he had are just absolutely incredible.
Yeah. That's directing, though.
Oh,
right.
Okay. Well,
What round is this? I don't remember.
we're talking about the actual subject. I was just talking about the fact that it's the octopus and that what he did. And okay.
Yeah, I'm just.
There's really not a lot of acting at all. It's more about the octopus when I talk subject, because he was sitting at a table for 90% of the movie.
Yeah, I felt like
swimming.
I felt like a lot of the stuff about his kid and stuff was a little bit kind of shoehorned in.
Yes.
Where it's just like, hey, you know, we learn about ourselves by looking at nature, and it's like, yeah, but it's not all about you. You know, sometimes nature's just there for nature's sake, and sometimes it eats you. Sometimes you eat the bar, sometimes you eat the bar, and sometimes the bar eats you.
Well, and that's, I think the difference is that the subject in that movie is focused less on the humanity and more on the octopus and learning about the octopus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think by far the octopus is, when you're talking about my octopus teacher, the octopus is by far the more interesting and less pretentious subject. This dude really loves the smell of his own farts. He seriously would not. I just found him kind of insufferable. The photographer guy. He really ground my gears. The interesting parts of that are learning about the octopus and watching the octopus. If they would have had another narrator and not just had like an hour and a half of this guy talking about how he fell in love with an octopus, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. As far as Grizzly Man goes, they got a real assorted cast of weirdos, and that was kind of cool. The bears are super interesting, and I like watching it. The only thing I can feel watching most of it is like Timothy Treadwell is super lucky these bears didn't get hungry earlier. I can't believe he lasted 13 years out there. It doesn't make any sense. These bears were incredibly tolerant of this complete weirdo. I have a real complex relationship with whether or not I enjoyed watching Timothy Treadwell, because he feels to me, and this, you know, I don't have any evidence of this other than what I've seen, but it feels to me like he is someone with a profound mental lapse and difficulties that he's not understanding the danger he's putting himself in. And the more he gets away with being around these animals, the more it's kind of reinforced that they're his friends and they're not going to do anything to him. And then in the end, of course, he meets a really tragic fate. And I think the most tragic part of it is that he brought someone else along with him and got them, you know, killed as well. I believe strongly in a person's right to do what they want with their life, but he definitely put himself, and I think to some extent the bears, in danger by being around them and socializing them with humans and changing their, you know, habitat. I think that's the case with my octopus teacher as well. We kind of discussed, Heather and I, like the sharks that get to the octopus, spoiler alert, are they tipped off by the fact that there's this guy around all the time with a camera? Like, are they curious? There's this line between human and nature that the subjects in this film seem to certain degrees forget exists. And in both their cases, it shows itself, right, that we are not separate from nature, and we're not, you know, one with these animals. We're not, there is difference between us and the worlds we live in. They live in this very cruel, unforgiving world, and at times that can really, really be dangerous for us. So yeah, I found the whole Grizzly Man thing really kind of heartbreaking, because he seemed like such a lost soul that was struggling so much to find. He'd basically kind of failed and alienated his way out of like society. And that's difficult. That's hard to watch. And then to see what happens to him is, I think, what makes it very sad. And again, he brought someone else into this scenario, and that is painful to understand as well, that, you know, someone else is dead because of his mission. Obviously she had a choice, right? But it's just kind of depressing in a way. And my octopus teacher, I love the octopus. It's beautiful. It is one of the most fascinating creatures. They are so clever and brilliant and have so many interesting defense mechanisms. And really, it's like, you know, I would have rather watched this movie if it was like a David Attenborough sort of just nature documentary, rather than talking the stuff about how nature informs us in life, and it changed his perspective on things. I kind of left that, could have missed that completely, and I would have been fine with that.
You know, I think, you know, I mean, you guys kind of touched on this, but the way that the people in the people in the movies have kind of like put themselves into it. I mean, it's really about people kind of, you know, putting themselves in front of nature and into nature and what happens. You know, the relationships that are formed and the digestive tracts that are explored. It's you know, it's interesting. And then there's also, I mean, to the same extent, it's Werner does the same thing though. I mean, he's in the movie, and you know, he's narrating it, and you know, he's on screen for part of it when he's, you know, talking and listening to the tape, and so you know, there's this sense of that people just can't help themselves, and I have a lot of respect for people that can put together a very compelling documentary and not inject themselves into it. But sometimes that's the story, you know. Sometimes the story comes out that, you know, the filmmaker's part of it. So, probably happens more than it should.
Yeah, I like to think, you know, when we think of documentaries, we like to think of them as like objective and impartial and that kind of thing. But, you know, as you get older and you watch more and more documentaries, that's definitely not the case. And I think Werner definitely inserted his personality into Grizzly Man to a certain degree to kind of make a statement about Timothy's personality a little bit, which I think we could have maybe inferred ourselves from the footage. You know, maybe Werner's narration and opinion was not necessary. But yeah, you know, I had a hard time really being surprised or feeling sorry for Timothy when he got eaten by a bear. And like somebody mentioned before, I was like, well, you know, how did he go 13 years without that? And I think the biggest thing was that he was there in the 13th year when he was actually eaten by the bear. He was there at a time when he would not normally have been there. And I think that probably is what made the difference. He made a mistake. He was there when there were unfamiliar bears, and it was lean times. There wasn't a lot of food left. And so he became a larger target than he had been in the past. But I feel like I don't know if Timothy is a sympathetic character or not. I don't know if I feel sorry for him or if it's just kind of like, okay, you know, you do what you want, but you know, we are not going to be surprised when you get eaten by a bear. And I do feel like the real tragedy was that his girlfriend was also killed. Because that was completely unnecessary. I mean, it seemed throughout the whole thing that Timothy was just kind of actually just waiting to get eaten by a bear. I feel like that's what he wanted. He would become one with the bear, integrated with it. Now, as far as some of the subjects in Grizzly Man, some of them, the coroner and his ex-girlfriend, whose name was Jewel. Yeah, they had a couple of scenes where it's like, oh, this is really awkward, because you can tell this isn't off the cuff. They know this is coming. It's kind of rehearsed, and it felt a little bit awkward. And when the coroner is trying to dramatically tell the story of listening to the tape and hearing them screaming and all this kind of stuff, it's like, he's not a good actor. It doesn't seem genuine. It really kind of like it's almost kind of like embarrassingly silly.
I think that's actually how that guy talks all the time.
Could be.
When he's telling his wife how to make the sandwich, and it's just, like, and then the mayonnaise gets spread ever so smoothly, leaving corner. I'm gonna treat something like it.
Yeah, and then I guess what I want to say about My Octopus Teacher is that it really did a great job of making you sympathize with and kind of feel for the octopus. You never realize that you can have such an emotional connection to a creature like that, and it makes you feel something for that creature, which I think is important. And someone mentioned it before. I think that the octopus really is the central character in that, and the filmmaker diver he's secondary. He's telling the story, but he's injecting himself into the story as well a little bit. So I guess that brings up questions about what narrators do and how much of it the story is theirs and how much of it is the subject's. But anyway,
I think Kyle brought that up the best is, the observation. Does observation actually change the subject that you're watching? Because that's one of the biggest things with humans, psychological experiments and things, when you're being watched. So by what both of them did, injecting them into those environments, how did they change the behavior?
Right.
And that's a super difficult thing in documentaries, because even by observing something, you're changing it. We know this from directing films. You think you know someone, and then you get them on camera, and something comes out of them, the way they act or behave around a camera. You're like, wow, you're a totally different person.
Yeah.
It just happens when you put cameras in people's faces.
Yeah.
That's like my whole rejection of reality TV. Like,
yep.
Going back even like MTV, the real world
reality.
It's such. I mean, it's the biggest misnomer. It's not real if people have cameras on them.
Yep.
100%.
People act very differently with the camera on them.
All right, boys.
And I think people make mistakes in nature because they get comfortable in their situation. And I think that was that 13th year.
Yeah.
He was just so comfortable. And,
And I thought the really sad part of that was all over a fight about his airline ticket. And rather than just like being calm and like, I'll figure out another way to do this, he just like rejects it and runs away from society back into the woods. And he puts himself at such great peril. Like, it's so crazy.
All right, guys. We got
Sorry,
to put it to a vote.
No,
you guys have brought up some very good observations and very good questions. Let's start it off with Andrew.
This one's, I flip-flopped a lot thinking about this one. I really think octopuses are amazing creatures, but I think the subject matter of Timothy and his life and all the crazy that was in him. So I'm going to go with your Grizzly Man for that one.
All right. Kyle?
In both these movies, I found that I would rather hang out with the animals than most of the people in them. But the octopus footage and the creature itself was so fascinating that I have to give it to My Octopus Teacher.
Wow. All right. Gabe?
Yeah, I think I identified more with the octopus than with Timothy, so I'm going to go with My Octopus Teacher.
All right. And Tom?
Well, it's a close one. It's a close one, though, right, Gabe?
Close.
I'm gonna give it to Grizzly Man, and more on that later.
All right, I only have trivia for acting, subject, and directing. So the shooting of My Octopus Teacher took place right in Foster's backyard of False Bay, along the Cape Town coastline in South Africa. The fatal bear attack occurred near Upper Khalifa Lake in Alaska's Katmai National Park. Ironically, after Treadwell spent most of his adult life trying to protect bears that were already protected by Alaska wildlife policy, his death forced authorities to kill 2 suspect dangerous bears.
That means one of those bears didn't do it.
That does.
I thought they said they caught the bear.
That might be the most fucked up part of the entire story. It's not in the movie.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah,
Right.
that he's more responsible for harm to the bears. He thought of himself
right.
very much as a nature protector, and I was like, did this fucking guy protect any nature?
Yeah, because
what did he do to actually help protect them?
Right.
He killed more bears than he actually saved.
Correct.
I want justice for Honey Bobo. Honey Bobo didn't do shit.
All right. Third round, directing.
Okay, so directing is a lot about making choices and solving problems and shaping a narrative and tone. As far as narrative and tone goes, both these movies are very consistent, which I like. We've talked about that many times. They grab your attention to certain extents. They do lose you, I think, in little bits and pieces, sometimes with the repetition, sometimes just because they stuck a weird character on camera and said, just do whatever you want and I'm not going to correct anything. And then also I got to say that the director of My Octopus Teacher is never shown on camera, which is, basically the way it usually goes with documentaries. The director isn't, involved in that way. Werner Herzog does make an appearance and do a voiceover, which is interesting because he's not the typical voice you think you'd hear from a voiceover director. He has a very distinctive German voice. But I thought it added a lot because I think he has an interesting voice, and the things he says are kind of fun and funny and a little bit chaotic in times. Like he really, really has it out for nature and thinks that nature is chaos and hates people. And I think that's just fun to listen to. Also, he seems to have a mildly veiled contempt for his subject, and where he thinks Timothy Treadwell is a real dum-dum and he got what was coming to him, but he's still interested in telling this story. And so I give him props for that because he didn't throw him completely under the bus. He did a pretty good job at remaining neutral most of the times, with the exception of the couple shots he took. But I think the decisions he made in the film overall were good in the way to tell the story, the footage he used. Again, you could say about his involvement, is that crossing a line or not? But all documentaries do that to some extent, or most documentaries do that to some extent, where the director gets involved and sometimes becomes a character. That being said, I think My Octopus Teacher really suffered from the desire to have simply one person talk on and on and on about this experience. And it's not that it's not an interesting story in parts. It came off as very pretentious to me, and it came off as really sort of droll and repetitive. All the things he was saying about how amazing the octopus was and how beautiful everything is and how worried he was for the octopus. You could have shown all these things by just simply following the octopus and doing your standard nature documentary voiceover about an octopus's life. I think him telling the story took a bit away from it at times, and it just became like, what's this movie really about? Because the octopus was the interesting part to me, and not this guy. And that's, just my feelings on that. But yeah, I think the decision to just leave it completely on him was a bad idea at times. And they definitely reused shots and tropes and things like, how many times do you need to see him diving to the bottom of the lake? How many times do you need to see him get in the water? How many times do you need to see his weird dad body in shape? How many times do you need to see him plug his nose. Like, a lot of it was just like repetitive stuff, whereas the really interesting stuff was what was happening in the water, and that's what I wanted to see a lot more of.
Yeah, I think, part of the directing here too, we often talk about cinematography in this category, and I really think this cinematography in My Octopus Teacher is really outstanding. It's just really beautiful from beginning to end, and it's really amazing. It makes me wonder. I don't know, and maybe Mike has some information on this. It makes me wonder how much of it was actually shot at the time that these events were happening. Obviously, a lot of the octopus footage, was shot when it was happening. But then we've got all these like kind of transitional scenes where there's like a storm coming through, or sunset, or birds flying by, or whatever. We've got all these transitional scenes, and it makes me wonder how much of that was picked up later.
There is a cinematographer credit, Roger Horrocks.
Okay. And I don't know how much that person was underwater, with the, is it James? Is that his name? James? I don't know how much he was underwater with him, and how much of it was actually James himself. Because, it's obvious that James was a filmmaker too. Oh no, it's Craig. Craig. I'm sorry. My bad. Craig. He was a filmmaker too, and so he obviously had some experience with a camera. But I always wonder how much of it was actually shot at the time. And then one of the things, we feel like this octopus is an individual, and we become connected to this creature, and but I wondered, one of the things that I wondered, and one thing I'd love to be able to ask them, is like, how did you know it was the same individual each time you went down there? How did you know that was there some distinctive marking? Was there something distinctive about this octopus that you knew that it was always the same individual? Especially there was that period of time where it disappeared for a little bit, and he had to become a detective and find it, and that kind of thing. Like, how do we know that this was an individual, and that these shots of this octopus were the actual same octopus throughout? I think, after it got injured and it was missing the leg and it was growing back and that kind of thing, I think you could probably pretty safely assume that was the same octopus. Because what's the likelihood that another octopus with the same leg missing, that's growing back at the same rate, is going to be in that same area? But, sometimes I wondered, like, is this really the same octopus every time that he sees it? And how does he know that? But I think one of the things that really stood out was the cinematography. Now, Werner didn't have the same opportunity. He was at the whim of this, arguably crazy person with a camera out in the woods with bears, and shooting his own footage. So Werner was at a disadvantage in that respect. He could not go out and get this really beautiful footage for his documentary. He had to rely on what he had. And so I think for Werner in the directing, it's about reviewing all this footage and then selecting what is important to the story, what is meaningful for the story. I think he really did a fantastic job of sifting through that footage, understanding it, collating it, and then choosing the right stuff for this documentary to kind of tell this story, to show different sides of the subject, to show different. Now, he did shoot he must have shot some of the footage, obviously, because there was the footage with him listening to the attack, and there's the footage with the really bad acting of the coroner and that kind of thing. So he shot some of that footage, but most of it he had to rely on crazy grizzly man out in the wild shooting his own footage. So I think that would be really challenging, and it would be really difficult to put together something as competent as what he did. So I give him credit for that.
See, you say bad acting, but we keep giving Nick Cage jobs.
This is true, but he goes back and forth.
I'm just saying, the corner.
Sometimes he's fantastic, and other times he's.
I know, but no one's paying that corner $20 million to make a movie. Like, he's much cheaper and just as interesting as Nick Cage.
I would love, the two questions I had watching Grizzly Man is, how did he stay clean shaven for 4 months? And
that's a good question. Well, some people can't grow facial hair that well, so maybe he didn't have to worry about it too much.
But not at all. And he's around grizzly bears. Do you think he'd want to? And then the other thing is,
sure.
How did he charge the batteries for his camera?
Yeah. This is a good question too.
I had one of the first things I shot on was a VX1000 Sony, the same one that he had, and those batteries did not last very long, and they took forever to charge. So, I don't, and this is 2003. Solar wasn't that good. It would have taken, a week to charge one of those batteries on solar. So I don't know.
Did you just have a bunch?
Maybe they dropped them.
And then the batteries, if they sit on the shelf, they drain. So I don't know.
Maybe that pilot flew over and dropped new batteries every now and then.
Oh, yeah, I guess. And then he'd just throw them up in the air, and the guy would fly by and catch them.
Yeah.
And take them,
take them back and charge them.
These are the ones that need charging.
The guy's like, he deserves to get eaten. He keeps taking all my electricity. Anyway, that's two of the small things on Grizzly Man that kind of. I thought
that is a good question.
Trying to figure out those two things, and I can't go on a shoot for 3 hours and not kill all my batteries.
Yeah, and I got the feeling anyway that Timothy really wanted to be an actor, and that he really craved being in front of the camera, and so you got the feeling that a lot of this was also just a performance. It was a character to a certain degree that he was playing. I don't doubt that he had a real passion for the Bears and really cared for them, but I do feel like a lot of it was just a performance, because they do talk about him making a show of being alone, even though he often wasn't 100% alone. Because you remember somebody showed up, like somebody's head. I don't know if it was his poor girlfriend who got eaten or not.
You could just call her Amy.
Amy. She shows up. Somebody shows up in the shot, and he's like, "Oh no, I'm supposed to be alone."
Yeah. And
he makes her go away, so it appears as though he's alone. And so I don't know how much of it was just for show. Maybe he had other people there with him at times, or maybe he wasn't really out there in the wilderness all the time. He went back to civilization from time to time to charge batteries and do all that stuff.
That's why he visits schools for free. He could just plug his charger in, charge a battery.
All I need is an outlet, guys.
I think we talked a little bit, I think, this off air about when the fox steals his hat. It really feels like one of the most honest moments of the entire movie, because he seems genuinely upset that the fox stole his hat and ran off with it, and it's got that funny but it's funny because it's true moment in it. So yeah. And there really isn't. I don't really know that there is a moment in Octopus Teacher that feels that way, but that has that kind of. Realism, but
it's really strange. You can really see Timothy flip at a couple of points where he is this kind of hippy dippy lover of all nature to you piece of shit, give me my fucking hat back. Yeah. And hey, leave that fucking bear alone and fuck all you guys. It's so strange. His attitude and his demeanor is so all over the place at points. You're just like, wow, there is something really wrong with this guy's mood regulation.
Well, and they talk about repeatedly about how he would hang out with the wrong people and he got into the wrong things, drugs and alcohol. And even he talks about having an alcohol problem, and so it seems antithetical to what, the kind of hippie, nature-loving personality he's trying to portray at times, But, yeah.
Well, but even the one where they were trying to, in a sense, keep him away from being in the park, and he was like, I'm going to fight this. I'll do anything because I'm protecting the bears. And he shifted from that to where he was like, hey, okay, bye. We're going to come back next season. Everything's great. He turns around to start walking away and then turns back towards the camera and he's just like, yeah, you know what, by the way, fuck everybody. They're trying to take this away from me. And he just freaks out instantly. He literally did a 180 and his personality went with it. It was so bizarre.
Yeah. I really think just comes to like most people, he's just a different person when the camera's rolling,
Yeah. Well, to your point about the batteries, I asked the same question about food.
Yeah, he has these giant barrels. I wonder if he foraged and stuff like that at times, but he does have these bear-proof barrels.
Right. And he was, again, it goes back to, are you really affecting nature around him? Because, he's evidently shitting in the woods somewhere. Does that change behaviors?
Yeah. They never get
absolutely.
into what kind of steward he was of nature. He's just a guy out there doing things, and we really don't know how carefully he's taking stuff and what he's doing. Also, they do mention, speaking of acting, they do mention that he came in second to Woody Harrelson to play Woody or is his name Woody? I don't know. The guy on Cheers.
Yeah, Woody.
Which means there's an alternate universe where Woody Harrelson is killed by bears.
He would have just been smoking weed with the bears.
Yeah.
And here's the thing about it too is that his dad knows that because Timothy told him.
Oh, right.
And there's a serious what do you call it? The untrusted narrator going on there.
Yeah, he's an unreliable narrator.
Unreliable narrator there.
Correct.
And yeah, Dad, I was second to Woody Harrelson on Cheers. I was like, I'm gonna go look.
Gave it to this fucking hippie. He's a piece of shit.
All right.
He's fucking balding. I'm not even balding.
Let's put it to a vote, Kyle.
Oh boy, this is directing, right? I'm totally lost.
Yep.
Yeah.
Directing.
Werner Herzog gets my vote for Grizzly Man.
All right, Gabe.
I'm gonna go with My Octopus Teacher.
Tom.
Even though I didn't say anything about My Octopus Teacher, I'm going to vote for it.
And Andrew.
I'm also voting for My Octopus Teacher, even though I didn't say anything in that round, but I've talked about it this entire show. So I think it stands. So I'm good.
Just so you know, since there were Gabe, you were questioning it. Roger Horrocks is an underwater cinematographer specializing in wildlife sequences for documentaries and features. Since 2007, Horrocks has worked on projects for National Geographic, Disney Films, and the BBC. So if you look him up on IMDb, there are a lot of photos of him underwater.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they got
really,
a good guy.
Really
for that.
Beautiful, just fantastically beautiful cinematography in that.
And it shows 100%.
Yes.
Yeah, because you did have to wonder, who was getting all these shots of Craig diving and all that kind of stuff, because I guess he could have set the camera down and then gone back and, caught himself. But somebody was definitely there with him at times.
Correct.
That's what I said at the beginning. That was the Bindi part.
You're getting no credit for anything today, Andrew.
No.
Damn it.
And I think you gotta give credit to My Octopus Teacher for being, keeping the action in frame when it's nature. it was some impressive camera work. Underwater, holding your breath. Yeah.
Yeah, I read somewhere where he could not the cinematographer. Craig could hold his breath for like 6 minutes.
Yeah.
And Pippa could hold hers for 4 minutes, which is pretty crazy. This is my favorite quote from a movie director ever. And I'm not even that big of a Werner Herzog fan, but this cracked me up. During a BBC interview about the film, Werner Herzog was shot with an air rifle. The interview was resumed indoors, and at the end, Herzog was encouraged to check his wound. Though there was a bruise the size of a snooker ball with a hole in it, Herzog declared, "It was not a significant bullet. I am not afraid." Like,
of course.
It is not a significant bullet. It is not afraid. I am not afraid. It might be the greatest thing ever. So, anyway, fourth, final round overall.
One of the things I think I'd like to talk about in this category, and we should have talked about this a little bit earlier, and it made me think of it when we were talking about the cinematography, is the editing of some of the sequences in My Octopus Teacher. When there were these sequences when the octopus was being hunted by a shark, and they really did a great job of making those feel like action sequences. The editing changed, the music changed, and I really appreciated how they did that, because it made those sequences exciting, and you were kind of worried about what was going to happen, and I think I felt like the music was very appropriate for My Octopus Teacher too. I thought it fit very well with what we were seeing on the screen, and kind of in a way kind of influenced your feelings, your emotions about what we were seeing on the screen. So yeah, and with Grizzly Man, I don't know. I guess I don't have anything additional for that right now. I really thought I did want to mention, and I think somebody mentioned him earlier, the pilot, what was his name? Sam Egley. I got a real kick out of him. He was the guy that was basically saying, "Oh yeah, he deserved it. He went out there and lived with bears. What did he expect? He deserved it." I got a real kick out of him. He kind of made me laugh. He was just kind of straight to the point and kind of funny. But,
well, and at the end, he's like whistling the theme song in the plane. He was like whistling it, and they were playing it with him.
Well, that was a different guy. That was the pilot. I think that was the pilot.
Oh, it was like his friend.
That was his friend.
That was his friend.
Yeah.
There was the other guy. There was another pilot guy that they talked to briefly right at the beginning, where he was like, "Oh yeah, I don't know, you go out and live with bears. I mean, what do you expect?" kind of thing. And I thought he was really funny. Actually.
The thing that we've all been saying this entire time. You go live
exactly.
With bears,
he just said it the way it was. Yeah, he was kind of funny.
I mean, it's interesting because you really kind of have. These two movies are that classic man versus nature. I mean, even My Octopus Teacher. I mean, there is a sense of, being able to go down under the water and get a story. I mean, you're not trying to capture the animal, you're trying to capture a story. And so there is a sense of him trying to control nature. Grizzly Man's a much more extreme, let's try and control nature situation that Timothy kind of finds himself in, where he's convinced himself that after 13 years that he has some sense of control of it. And Mother Nature doesn't play that game, as we've seen in hundreds of movies like Jaws and Twister and Jurassic Park. Like, Mother Nature doesn't give a shit about what you think you control, because she'll wind up running it. So by that measure, My Octopus Teacher is on better footing, because they get the story. They're able to capture enough film to put together a story. Grizzly Man, obviously, his attempt to control nature failed tragically. So, I don't know. It's interesting that people still continue to do this, to continue this idea that, we're human and we're gonna beat Mother Nature this time. Like, yeah, but you're not.
Right. We are not the top of the food chain as much as we would like to think we are.
No,
I don't know. I don't know. We're doing a pretty effective job of wiping out species every 32 minutes. So
sure, I mean that's fair. Again, it goes back to that. Nature is not something to be messed with, and when it needs to, it rears its head. And there are countless stories through history of these people that are doing amazing things. Again, we talked off stream a little bit about Steve Irwin, who, it was a freak accident, but he dabbled with things that most people should never dabble with, ever. And, Timothy, he did some crazy stuff, and it was amazing to watch. And at the same time, you're thinking, oh my God, you just slapped that bear's nose. I'm surprised you still have a hand. It's just amazing. And to get to that kind of comfort level and not think anything of it kind of, I don't know, tells the story before it's even played out. Octopus, my Octopus teacher, I agree 100%. Footage is gorgeous. Octopuses are so fascinating, as I said before. And I think it's fascinating that there was a connection that he did make with this particular octopus. And just being able to engage in its environment, hopefully not disturbing it too much. It eventually got to mate and have babies and, all the other stuff. They're just such fascinating creatures. And if he wouldn't have been in it, and if he would have just been this person swimming around because he had this interaction with the octopus, and it was completely a documentary about an octopus, I think it would have told the same story. Like, he didn't develop this story about the octopus. We were just viewing the life of this amazing octopus that he found out some really cool information about, he interacted with, and that was really neat. But without him, particularly giving the narrative that he did, it would have been the same movie. I would definitely agree with the music. I think in documentaries it's weird when they add cinematic music, but I think for a nature documentary, as close as my Octopus teacher was, I think you'd be missing something without some of that, because I think that did add something to those scenes, whereas the Grizzly Man, you don't really need music. But
and there was music in Grizzly Man.
There is a little bit, yes. There is. I'm not saying it was not there, but
yeah, I'm not sure. I felt like it was as effective as my Octopus teacher.
And my Octopus teacher, I think music was used as what we would consider in the movie art form, as it helping push the scene and drive the story that we're watching. As you said, it swelled when we get into an action sequence when the shark came by, and they made choices, whereas the Grizzly Man's music was more of like, we found some stuff on Pond 5 and it sounds really nice and he's out in the forest, so we'll play that. Like, it didn't drive the story. It was there to fill space, is what it felt like. But
I kind of felt some of the music was, I don't know, I felt like I was kind of sitting in a classroom watching a documentary in 12th grade. Like,
yes, I
don't know, the music, it didn't really do anything new for me, and it was almost a little predictable. So what were you thinking?
Oh, I was just going to say the one thing that stuck out to me as far as music was concerned in Grizzly Man was at the end, where there was that song, with lyrics, and then the pilot was kind of singing along with it. That's the point where I kind of really
he was whistling.
Music. No, he was singing. He was singing some of the words.
I did. Yeah. He did get the lyrics. He started off whistling.
Yeah, I can't remember the lyrics. It's not a very good rhyme.
He even threw Timothy Treadwell under the bus by throwing his name in there.
He did. He kind of modified the lyrics to throw Timothy in. What did he say? It wasn't a very good rhyme because it was always like, "This is gone," and that is gone, and
Gabe,
I don't remember what they all were.
Gabe, if you have a new album to promote, there's easier ways to go about it.
No, I'm not promoting that one. That's true. I don't remember the words, but it was like the Cherokee are gone,
pretty
the
good,
Buffalo are gone, and then he says Timothy Treadwell is gone. He throws that in there. He was kind of like a low rent Sam Shepard.
Neil.
It's
Sam.
like
No,
it's not. It's
Elliot.
not like they called, Chris Christopherson and was like, "Hey."
Yeah.
I sat so I work in video, so I've got all these monitors around me, and I'm in the basement working and on my stuff, and I can pop the movie up on the corner and kind of work sometimes. And so I did that with Grizzly Man, and to Timothy's credit, I got maybe a minute and a half into Grizzly Man, and it was so compelling right from the start, and there's no denying that he had somewhat of a gift with the camera, because I just him kind of down in the corner of my monitor while I was kind of like going through processing some videos, I immediately stopped it and went, well, I'm not going to get any work done if I keep this going, because I couldn't take my eyes off of it. Like I gotta keep, this is the guy that gets eaten. I definitely need to pay attention to what's going on here. And so there was something, even from the start, I think, and obviously it's the order of the stuff that Herzog put everything and put the movie together. But that the opening scene, I just immediately was drawn to it, and my attention was grabbed away, and I had the wherewithal to realize that this isn't a story that you can kind of watch on the periphery. It's going to like consume, poor choice of words, it'll consume your attention. So,
pun intended.
Too soon, Tom.
Yeah.
So,
Too soon.
Only 20 years or something.
20 years, yeah.
As someone with overall a generally dismal view of humanity, we talked kind of about how humans are doing a very good job destroying nature, which I agree with. But one of the great comforts I have in life is this quote I heard actually from a comedian, and that is nature bats last. So humans may destroy everything, all humans, all everything, all of our shit will tumble and fall and be destroyed, but in the end there will still be something here, and there will still be an earth here unless we find a way to completely obliterate it. And that does give me some comfort to think like, yeah, if we fuck this all up, something will still exist, maybe hopefully smarter than we are someday.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, that's.
And on that downer of a note,
I just wanted to mention that I felt like in Grizzly Man that Timothy's relationship with the foxes seemed more genuine to me than his relationship with the grizzly bears. That was a much more harmonious relationship, and a little bit surprising, because it's my understanding that the foxes are pretty timid, and they're not easily domesticated. And so I was really surprised to see those foxes just regularly hanging out with him, and that felt more genuine. And his desire to form a relationship and kind of almost become like the Grizzlies seemed very forced. And it's like he didn't realize it. I mean, he did have a connection in nature. It just wasn't with the Grizzlies that he wanted. And then,
that's interesting.
I just felt like they show the foxes, and they don't bring a lot of attention to it until the fox steals his hat, which is, like Tom said, one of the more genuine parts of the film. But I just always felt like that was a better relationship. And then I also wanted to tell a quick story about that night after I watched Grizzly Man. I had a dream about a Grizzly Man Lego set.
Serious? My God.
Yeah, where the little Lego guy was in pieces.
Oh my God.
You don't need a
Timothy's
special
Lego.
set for that. You don't need a special set. You can do that right now.
Oh my God.
I just don't know how to make a grizzly bear out of Legos. I'd need some guidance for that. But for some reason, I just think we should do that. We should do Lego sets for documentaries. We could do one for My Octopus Teacher. We could have an octopus Lego set. We could do Grizzly Man with a grizzly bear and Timothy and Amy. We could do one. What are some other documentaries we've watched? We could do
American movie.
Yeah, American movie.
God.
American movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
I
do the
think we gotta
stoner
do-
dude from American movie.
Oh, I got dibs on King of Kong. I'm pretty sure I could whip that out.
There you go.
I
All
could
right,
do a
I-
Lego.
I found you. I found
think
you a
this
Lego
is a
bear.
new series of Legos they should do.
I found
Yeah, I
you a
wanna do a
Lego
Lego
bear on
just in
eBay.
time for the Christmas season. Timothy Treadwell and his dead girlfriend
Oh my God.
comes in one tiny bag.
Yeah. It has to come with Werner.
Wait,
There has to be a
two
Werner Herzog Lego.
plastic bags with just their pieces in it.
Oh, you
People
guys.
Special
can't see me.
edition.
People can't see me, but I'm shaking my head.
You guys.
Special edition creepy coroner available for pre-order.
Hey. I don't want anything to do with this except, Gabe, I sent you a link to a Lego brown bear you can get on eBay.
There you go.
All
it's
right.
a start. It's a start.
It's
All right.
getting late.
Yeah,
let's
but
put it
it's
to a
really
vote.
weird. I literally had that dream the night after. Why? I don't know. I have no idea why I was dreaming about like a Lego set of Grizzly Man, but
I know what to get you for your birthday, Gabe.
Yep.
yep.
All right. Let's put it to a vote, Gabe.
My Octopus Teacher.
Tom.
I go Grizzly Man.
Andrew.
My Octopus Teacher.
And Kyle.
In close fights, I choose the animal that would win in a fight. Therefore, a grizzly bear could easily kill a octopus. So,
Whoa, you're assuming a lot. That's assuming
Grizzly
a
bear.
lot.
depends on where they
You could
fight. I
catch the
suppose.
octopus.
Yeah, that's true. And the size of the octopus. Yeah.
All right. I do not have any trivia for overall, except for now I'm going to be thinking about this Lego set.
And now you guys know that there's going to be a Cinesmack Lego set thing that comes out because whoever's listening to us.
Yes.
Let's.
I hope
Yeah,
so.
this is an untapped market licensing documentaries for
This is
Lego.
a test.
Legos, yes.
This is a test of what our true influence is on the, on
The universe.
popular culture.
Oh my
Documentary Lego sets. I love it.
Seriously, dude, we did a story about Grizzly Man. If Slash Film comes out and does a story about Grizzly Man in the next 2 days, I think we just have to quit.
They're obviously listening to us.
They
and just
are.
Their
using
content would dry
us
up.
as
They wouldn't know what
props.
to do.
They got to hold it. It's the 20th anniversary of Timothy's death is in October, so they just need to chill and wait
Hey,
for the
Slash
Criterion
Film,
release.
if
Yes.
you're going to start using us for articles, at least give us some credit.
Yeah,
Yeah. Jeez.
you don't have
So
to interview us. You don't have to interview us. Clearly, no one on here has anything to say.
In case anyone is wondering what we're talking about, for like a year, every time we put out an episode, within a week or two, there are numerous articles or something that come out about our subjects,
Okay.
and it's very weird.
It's like synergy, but no one asked us.
Correct. Like we are a step ahead, yet we don't matter.
Yeah. We're flattered, though. We're flattered. Please keep it up.
All right, Tom, recommendation.
Recommendation. My recommendation is the New Yorker website. And here's why.
Oh my God.
Shut the fuck up. Shut up. So I'm doing the Oscar death race, and that's where you try to watch all this year. There's 54 movies that were nominated in something. I'm trying to get all 54 movies watched before Oscar night, which is in 12 days. And I'm getting there, but I recommend the New Yorker website because the shorts are the hardest ones to find. You know, they don't play in the theaters typically. And on the New Yorker website, you can watch 5 Oscar-nominated shorts. There's 2 documentaries, Stranger at the Gate and Haul Out, 2 animated films, The Flying Sailor and the excellent Ice Merchants, which is a wonderful film, and then a short live-action film, Night Ride. And they're all free, and you don't have to sign up for anything. You just go on and you can watch 5 Oscar films. They run anywhere from 8 to 40 minutes because they're all shorts. So anyway, check out the New Yorker website. Fantastic place. If you want to, you know, when you get to the short categories then at Oscar night watching the show, you can be like, oh, I saw Ice Merchants, and Tom was right. It was fucking awesome. Oh, shit, it didn't win.
Thanks.
There you go. I would suggest it a website and 5 movies.
Andrew.
Wow. I'm not sure. Okay. Well, I'm going to do something a little weird too, because I'm going to recommend a movie that actually hasn't quite come out yet, but is part of it, and it's actually based on a true story. So it's kind of a documentary, but it's really, you know, it's just based on a true story. But it was, you know, a good portion of my childhood. And that's the documentary that's coming out called Tetris. And it's about how they brought Tetris to America.
Well, it's a docudrama, right?
Yeah, it's technically, docudrama, I guess. Yeah. That's why I said it's just based on a true story. Okay. But, you know, it's Taron Egerton, and I love him. I think he's a fantastic actor, and he's very charismatic and stuff. So I'm looking forward highly to it. But if you played a lot of Tetris as a kid, watching the trailer makes me want to play Tetris again.
It does look really good.
Yeah.
So does Air.
Yes, Air also looks very good.
Kyle.
Oh, my turn?
Yep.
I am going to recommend a short documentary I watched on Netflix. I am unabashedly a cat person. Not that I don't love dogs, I just have never really had them, so I am into cats. And it's called Inside the Mind of a Cat. It's only about an hour long, and it is a really interesting and fascinating look at cats and our relationships with them and how they think of us and the research that's going into now kind of understanding cats. There's a lot of research on dogs and how dogs behave and dog behaviors, and now they're catching up on cats, and I found it really interesting and oh so cute. There's so many cute cats. So that's what I recommend.
All right.
It's amazing they were able to get any cats to cooperate with the study. That's probably that deserves an Oscar right there.
Yes.
That's worse.
Did
That's
they
worse
just
than
knock
working
over
with
the
kids.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, they are frequently just pissing people off. It's very. Yeah.
We're not going to be able to use. We're not going to be able to use a boom mic on this one, guys.
Yeah. Right.
Gabe.
Well, I'm just going to say that The Last of Us on HBO has been really fantastic. I've just really enjoyed it very much. Episode 3 with Nick Offerman in it is unexpected and extraordinary. It's really just a great episode. So even if you've never played the game, I have the game, but I suck at video games. And I tried to play it, and I didn't get very far. But it's a cool game. The show is just really fantastic. I know we can kind of tire of all the zombie apocalypse kinds of things, but this is a little bit different approach to it, and it's the acting is great. The writing is just stellar. It's really a great show. And also, I I became familiar with the game first through the music. Somehow I heard some of the music. I'm like, this is really great music. And then I realized, it's music for a video game of all things. The music is fantastic, and I was a little bit concerned that when they did the show for HBO, they wouldn't use the music. But they did, and I'm very, very thankful for that because the music is really fantastic. I think even if you're not interested in the show, look up the music from the video game. It's really great. So I would highly recommend The Last of Us on HBO.
All right. Thanks, Gabe.
It's incredible.
My recommendation is a mockumentary, and it's fantastic. And actually, I just found it yesterday and started watching it, and I laugh out loud by myself while I watch it. And it's called Kunk on Earth, and it's on Netflix. It is absolutely hilarious, and it's dry British deadpan comedy, and I absolutely find it hysterical. It stars Diane Morgan as Philomena Kunk, and she is doing a documentary about Earth, and you just need to watch it. So far, my favorite line is, "Here I am in Greece, not the musical, the country." Like, it just gets me every time. And it is delivered so dryly and so precise. It's fantastic. So if you get a chance, check out Kunk on Earth, and it's on Netflix. All right. We're going to poke the monkey, find out who won.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Your winner, by decision, is my Octopus teacher!
Ooh, it doesn't get any closer than that. I mean, a tie. But
A tie would be closer than that, but...
Yeah, that would be closer. That'd be touching.
No touching.
So, you guys eat chicken nuggets. You guys do ranch or ketchup on there? Nothing?
What?
Okay.
Neither.
See? I told somebody I'd ask that question on the show, and we're running out of time, and I don't have a time to do that. And if I did it during Grizzly, man, it'd be like, what did we were talking about eating people, and I was like, well, I don't want to talk about that there, so I'll just cut this part out.
I'm not cutting it out.
Cut it out. God. Somebody said they're like, hey, ask everybody on your podcast if they like ranch or ketchup with their chicken nuggets, and I was like, well, they're all smart, so they would say nothing, but barbecue sauce. I don't know.
Yep, nothing for me.
We're done, right? Jesus Christ,
I
cut
like
me off.
barbecue sauce on my chicken nuggets.
All right.
That's pretty tasty. Ketchup would be weird.
I bet
Mayonnaise is okay.
I bet that bear didn't have any barbecue sauce.
All right, here we go. We would appreciate it if you could leave us a review on whatever podcasting service you use. It helps us reach new listeners. If you like us, tell your friends. If you hate us, tell your enemies. You can contact us at cinesmack@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Just search Cinesmack. Wait, what is this, Tom?
What is that?
I can't believe how well that's working. Oh my
That's
god!
crazy. What is that?
It's just a Keanu Reeves GIF, and I put it up on the Zoom, and it's like he's here.
It's just like on your phone or something?
It's just on my phone. Holy shit, that's hilarious! Look at
That was my reaction to your chicken nugget question.
Why is there a goat that lives in her house? That's my question.
It's a conversation my wife and I are having. So
Anyway,
anyway,
all right.
It's ketchup, by the way. I didn't
Holy
realize I was on
shit.
mute. It's definitely ketchup.
oh, ketchup. All right.
I think I'd do maybe honey mustard.
Honey mustard's good too.
Is that,
Ooh,
is that an option?
regular honey would be good. Bears
that's
like
good.
honey.
I mean, bears
chicken
like
nuggets
honey.
are already good,
If I've
you don't
learned
shoot
anything
potato.
from watching Winnie the Pooh, it's that bears like honey.
Yeah, bears like honey.
Oh, yeah,
And they
honey
don't
mustard.
wear pants.
I
Honey
think I know
mustard,
where we're
that's what
going
the
with
bear
this.
had.
They don't wear
Yeah.
pants.
Yeah.
Do you think when the bear ate Timothy Treadwell, it was like, oh, bother?
Oh my God. Oh, we're going to hell. I'm not laughing. I'm shaking my head.
I'm trying not to laugh, but I'm laughing. In April, we hit the greens, and I get to hop into the commentator booth as Happy Gilmore tees off against Caddyshack. For Kyle, Gabe, Andrew, Tom, and myself, thanks for listening, and go catch a flick.
So that wraps up another futile attempt at humorous film commentary. These four middle-aged men are wasting their time and ours as we march inexorably towards the cold grasp of death. Nature wants nothing from man but to be bones in the earth. And so we return to dust in the chaos of the swirling galaxies, forever uncaring, not needing us, not wanting us. And like Timothy Treadwell, we end up in the belly of the beast. I'm Werner Herzog. Good night, and God bless.
This has been a test of the Southsider Studios podcast system. This was only a test. If this were a true lack of entertainment, your head would explode. Go to iTunes and subscribe to our feed. Just search Southsider Studios.
The most wonderful time of the year. Although, let's be honest, around the holidays, things really add up. But here's the good news. Only at Verizon, you can get a single line for $50 per month when you switch and bring your phone. So, while ice skating for two is definitely costing more, here at Verizon, you can save. Gifts for your third cousins? Steep. A single line with Verizon? Not so steep. A real tree? Pricey. A single line with Verizon? Less pricey. Flights to see Mima and Pops? Those are up. A $50 per month single line? That's down. Even a trip to the Atlanta Holiday Market will cost you more. But with Verizon, you can switch and bring your phone for just $50 per month for a single line on unlimited welcome, with autopay plus taxes and fees. All this to say, during the holiday season, when everything is costing more, you can get more for less right now at a local Verizon store. $15 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G, 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply.